Kobolds are so efficient at reproduction. How come goblins haven't outnumbered them at this point? And all this lore is coming from the world where my mangas, the Night of Slaves and Devil's Deal takes place in, so let's jump into it. And all this lore is coming from the mating manual, which you can support by grabbing a Ruby Gold sub or getting an original character into the breeding guide as a diamond tier. And the first thing to understand this question between the goblins and the kobolds is the fact that the goblins do not reproduce nearly as fast as the kobolds at first. And that's because kobolds have the ability to reproduce females at 8 months and males at 10 months. And then gestation is only a short 3-month period. And they have the ability to produce about 8 to 15 kobolds at a time. And if we look at the numbers from the breeding teams, that seems like a lot of kobolds at first, but wait until you hear about the post-birth complications and just natural selection, and we'll talk about how many actually typically become adults. So out of the 13 births that were reserved, only 11.5 kobolds born per birthing, which means that there were 149 kobolds born, but 26 of them died within the first week. And 6 of them came out stillborn. 15 of them died due to crumples, which is also known as the shaking heart disease. And it's effectively where during the actual birthing process, the heart starts to really vibrate to the point that the body cannot keep up and actually ends up shaking the baby on the inside and ends up basically going into cardiac arrest. And that's called crumples. And out of the 11.5 kobolds that are typically born, 5 of them end up passing away due to basically fighting other kobolds. And kobolds, by the way, are baby kobolds. And so even though 8 to 15 kobolds are basically born, only 2 to 4 of them will end up making it to adulthood. And that's also factoring in the fact that during hunts that they could get killed and stuff like that. But it is okay because the fallen kobolds will end up usually either getting eaten by their siblings or by other kobolds to basically refresh the energy that was used to basically give them birth. Now let's talk about the goblins, which is a lot more morbid, and I will have to give trigger warnings for this. This is a non-SA type of birth, but it is still forced birth. The goblins went from being a very sentient race to basically being what we traditionally know in media, thanks to the elves and the orcs launching that biological DNA bomb at them in order to stop the goblins from becoming a major predominant race in the world stage. And big props if you can identify the original source of these propaganda posters. So at the very beginning for the goblins, whenever they are starting to build up a little brood, they will snatch human, dwarf, and orc women. And if they can get their hands on a Brimborn, they will kill for a Brimborn. And they will take them back. They will not essay them. They will put them in a pool of mixed materials such as semen, water, and some gum sap. And they will let the women effectively stew, almost like a crock pot situation, where eventually enough material will seep in, and eventually something will take, and then the woman will get pregnant, and then eventually they will keep her in the brooding pool, keep her fed until she gives birth, and then they will put her back into the brooding pool. Goblins do not have sex. They do not have sex to reproduce. They do not have sex to basically pleasure. They don't engage in sexual activity. When the biological bomb dropped, that part of them went out the window. But whenever a Striga goblin is born, that's where things typically tend to ramp up. Because normally the process for the brooding pool is painfully slow. We are talking weeks to months of trying to get women pregnant. And then you still have to go through the process of months and months of gestation to only give birth to maybe half a dozen. But once you get a Striga goblin, specifically the alchemist, they have the ability to infuse their blood into the serum, and they have a higher cognitive function to basically set up what are known as birthing factories, where they will, instead of using the brooding pool, they will hook them up to an apparatus and basically just start pumping the material through them. And that will have a much quicker, much higher rate of pregnancy, and the number of children that will be born is dramatically increased. And the recovery time for a woman goes down. So you can increase the rate of production for goblins. And when you get a Striga alchemist, that is when the Adventurers Guild really cares, because that's how things get out of control really quickly. But kobolds are able to bolster quite impressive numbers, as there is a Glimmer facility that they stay at, which has 14,000 adults and 5,000 kobolds. So kobolds are capable of having massive infrastructures in terms of society and functioning on a macro scale. But you can get more lore in the mating manual as I'm building the Cyclops entry now.